And there we go. Hello and welcome. My name is Bea Chatfield. I'm from Boston Parks and Recreation. I am the project manager for our improvements to Ringer Park project that we are here to share with you tonight. This is what we think is the culmination of a lengthy design process, and we are excited to share what we think is a design that reflects the comments that we've heard, the feedback that we've received, the meetings that we've had. So thank you for joining. And I see that we have Councillor Breeden has joined us, or someone from Councillor Breeden's office wants to say hello, make any starting off remarks.
Hi, good evening, Bea. Thank you so much, and thank you to everyone who's here to participate in this community meeting number 4. I feel that we're making great progress, and our project is improving as we go with more community input. So thank you so much, and I look forward to listening to the conversation this evening. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you, Councillor Breeden. If there are any more elected officials in the room, I don't see any, but all right, moving on. If someone joins, we can give them the mic. If we can go on to the next slide, please. Here are our agenda for the night. We're going to do our introduction, our project team timeline and goals, the status and recap of where we're at. We've got review of site improvements plan. Then we will open it up for a conversation and discussion. And that is, if you could hold your questions until the end, we appreciate it. If you have anything pressing, feel free to put it in the chat. We will try and address all of that in the second to last part of the night. And then we've got our next steps. I see in the chat that we have somebody from Senator Brownberger's office. Regina, if you'd like to unmute yourself and say something, please do.
Hi, just want to say hello. Sorry, I joined a little late.
That is okay. Thanks for joining us. We're happy to have you. And if we can go on to the next slide. There we go. So I'm Bea Chatfield. There's my contact info. I've heard from quite a few of you. My phone number, my email, I will respond to you. We am here tonight with Kyle Zick and Rob Barella and Joe Filiosi. I said that right. Yes. Okay. Kevin LaRue from Office of Neighborhood Services, I don't think is in the house tonight, but he sent his regards and his support. He's been helping us get out the word. And I'm also here with Michael from he's our outreach coordinator at the Parks Department. So thank you, Michael. Tonight, we're just going to talk a little bit about one of basically the park design. And there are four ingredients in park design. We've got the City of Boston priorities, which include resilient sites, which include trying to encourage connectivity between community members. We've got things like safety guidelines and regulatory guidelines that we always have to pay attention to. We've got our own department-specific parks and recreation goals that align with the City of Boston priorities, but are a little bit more specific to parks. And then we've got our community input. So that is what we're focusing on tonight. We are trying to understand from you if we have heard what your priorities are, and if this plan, and if the playground components and the design pieces, if all of these reflect what you were looking for. This is one of our ingredients, and all of this pulls together under the very talented skills of Kyle Zick and his team in the park design. So if we can go on to the next slide. Here's our timeline. I feel like this should be like an 11 by 17 or like a scroll. Like this project has been expanded quite a bit. We had our first community meeting for, post comprehensive plan. So the real like shovels, not shovels in the ground, but the actual real project that we're working on now, not just the planning phase, started in June of 23. And we had meeting 1, meeting 2. At that point, we heard that more scope, more things in the project, more areas addressed is what the community really wanted. And so we went back and we got further funding, which is fantastic. We are hugely grateful to the Harvard Alston Public Realm Flex Fund, which is providing us with $900,000 additional, and the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Park Grant, which is giving us $500,000 additional dollars. So that is a meaningful boost, and it allows us to renovate both the playground area and the ball field. And so we're looking at quite a comprehensive renovation at this point, instead of the scope that we were showing before, which was mainly sort of entrances and pathways and dog park. So here we are, December 24, community meeting 4. After this meeting, assuming we are, getting sort of confirmation from you guys, we're going to move ahead into construction documents, go out to bid in April, start construction summer, July really is the goal, and then complete the project almost a year later. So if we could go on to the next slide, I think I'm going to be handing this off to the design team. Here we go.
All right, thank you, Bea. I'm Kyle Zick, a landscape architect with KZLA. We're the designers for the park. And we've been involved from the beginning in the comprehensive plan. And so I wanted to kind of walk through the plan evolution so you have a sense of the continuity of the ideas and where we are now. When we were working on the comprehensive plan, we had a series of meetings. This is just right after COVID. And we looked at the whole park. And that included the entrances, the pathways, the trees, lighting, drainage, playground, gathering area, the courts, and the fields. Not everything was the same then that we're thinking about now. I mean, at the time, we looked at a bunch of different dog park locations, and we were thinking around the backstop of the Little League baseball, and the playground wouldn't be renovated where it was. And we were going to make some adjustments to the pathways and entrances. Otherwise, renovate the courts at some point, but not, change them in a big way. So then, as Bea mentioned, when we had started this project back in the fall of 2023, the scope was smaller. The construction funding was $1.25 million, and it was a park entrance, the primary pathway, the woodland pathway, a dog park in the location we had talked about, and some improvements to the gathering space. We weren't touching the playground, we weren't touching the ball field or the courts. And that's when we heard from you all the Ringer Park is due for more than this, and Parks was able to secure more funding. And that's where we are now, and I'll explain this more. So now we have $1 million more for construction, 2.2 million. So while we're still going to do the entrances in that main pathway, including any lighting improvements and drainage in the walkway through the woodlands, we're looking at the field, playground, dog park, and gathering area. And I'll provide a little bit more specifics here, because at our last meeting, we did show different locations for the dog park and playground. We showed you move the playground here, 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 and the dog park basically interchangeable with those locations. It was not consensus, but a majority of people said that the playground makes a lot of sense down at the field location, because then you can have people using courts, playground, gathering space, and field all at one level with some of the same amenities. And then the dog park at the elevated location, still convenient and central, but away from residences, away from the playground, and away from kind of the primary circulation. So we'll get into more detail tonight in terms of the design of the dog park in the location of the current playground, and the playground moving down into what is the outfield of the Little League field. And that would still reserve space for a nice, flexible athletic field in the remainder of the lawn. So the entrances are still part of the project. The 5 entrances that we've highlighted here with these arrows will make improvements that include accessibility, access, some preservation to some of the masonry, which I think this will be more apparent here. These same views we've been showing you all along, but just to get a sense of, like at Webley, we're adding a stone wall, we're controlling access with a gate. At Inree, there's more identification, and just kind of identifying the entrance there, clarifying it. Also, like an example at Alston Street near Glenville Street, that there's a lack of identity and a real kind of welcoming sense. So we're trying to make these fairly consistent and have a similar approach. Oops, sorry. So then in terms of lighting, we have the legend here shows you like the yellow is existing lighting and the orange is proposed. Where we're proposing lighting is where the pathways are changing alignment. So at Gordon Street, we're going downhill to avoid the steep part of the existing path and make that accessible. So we'd realign the lights. There is no lighting along the outfield of the existing Little League field. That path is dark, so we would add lighting. And the path along this property line would shift away from the fence line a little bit further in, and we would adjust the lighting. But otherwise, no other changes to the existing lights. The other thing to point out, we haven't had a chance to meet with the community about the repair of the lights that are on the walkway, the solar lights, but that's something that's still on our to-do list to see if we can make some of those improvements, because we know a number are broken or are being stockpiled until they can be repaired. So we're going to start, let me just back up for a second, just to kind of give you a sense of the agenda in terms of how we're going to walk through this tonight. First, we're going to talk about the gathering space, which is that circular space at Emory between the basketball courts and the field and where the playground is now. Then we're going to talk about the dog park and then the playground. All right. So the gathering space, basketball courts are to the left. The existing playground, which we're proposing as a dog park, is here at the bottom. The new playground here to the right, and Emory is here to the top. The circle is generally, I mean, the form here is the same as what's here now. So there's a circular path system with spurs to these different attractions. And right now there's lawn and, bare earth in the center of that circle. So we want to see, how can this be attractive as an entrance, a hub of activity that allows people to circulate to different places, but then also is an attraction that people want to use. It's not just an eyesore or a place that's eroded. So this is what you have today. My back is to Emory. The playground is up here. The circular pathway lined by Zelkova trees and a little bit of lawn and some dirt. And there's erosion that happens through here and here in the foreground. So we have a number of improvements we're recommending here. The dog park is beyond to the top of the page. The playground would be to the left and Emory is to the back and basketball courts are to the right. So we want to take this circle and just have it do more and be more productive for the park users. So there would be some paving through here that would be used for seating. And it could also, informal activity and gathering. Then we want to carve up the space and add planting. So there's a little bit of a semicircle here, and then there's this shape here that also will allow us to address the erosion. So we have pervious paving, so water that runs through here will be basically drained through the pavers, but if that were clogged or was greater volume, it would go into the stormwater infiltration planting. And then the orange are tables and chairs to allow a place for people to gather. Now, a couple things to point out, and this is true for all of the different design studies we'll show you. We're trying to think, what is the design style or approach for these different spaces? What is appropriate in Ringer Park? I think the rugged terrain with ledge outcroppings, the woodlands make this a less formal park than other places. So we're kind of taking cues from that. And that's why you're seeing we have some boulders and things are a little bit more informal because we're thinking kind of that is the style to build on. So this is a view if I were entering the park from Emory. You see the stormwater area here to the left with some lining of boulders along the edge, which can be informal seating. More formal seating that is in place of tables and chairs. An edge reinforcing that circle with some identity that it's Ringer Park as you're entering. And again, the basketball courts are to your right. The dog park would be in the background and the playground would be to the left. Another view looking toward where the playground will be, but you get a better sense of the amount of paving versus planting, that there's informal places and more formal. And then, the planting is adding trees within that circle. So it's like an inside of the circle of Zelkovas, there's even more planting just to add more vegetation, cooling effects, and a little bit more of nature into the park. So then we're going to shift, we've just talked about the gathering space. So now we're going to talk about the dog park, which is proposed where the playground is now, and then we'll talk about the playground after that. So with the dog park, there's a number of different design considerations that we're taking into account. One, we were trying for about 10,000 square feet of total area, and that can be accommodated within the footprint of the existing playground. We are showing a small dog area and large dog area. It's completely fenced in with a 5-foot tall chain link fence. We want to have access to water for the dogs to drink themselves, but also for maintenance. And we want it to be accessible, and we want to have access to shade. So you have to think about how you will access the dog park. There's an accessible route now that is this blue line. That's the way you would access, one of the ways to access the playground. The stairs coming up from the gathering space would remain, so that's another way to come in. There's also stairs from this direction, and there's a steep path heading in this direction. So we're not removing any pathways, but because of security for a dog park, we don't want to have gates at every one of these access points. So as I go to the next slide, this will become more clear. So we have the accessible route, the stairs from this route, and then pathway here. Those all connect with a sidewalk that's outside of the dog park. So people can circulate to where we want the dog park entrance to be, because we want to have double gates. So if one gate is open, the other gate is closed, no dogs are running out. And we have one of those for the large dog area and small dog. So the gathering space is just off the page here. You're seeing the corner of the basketball court, and the hill is here. So we have a dividing line here. That's a fence that separates the large dog area from the small dog area. And you enter, as I mentioned before, those double gates, and this light gray is pavement. So there's an accessible route around the perimeter of both, which gives you access to benches and to water fountains. And then the larger part of the dog park is pea stone. We are adding in trees within the dog park that would be protected, and then trees here providing shade or potential for shade, where more of the sun is coming from. Then we have some rendered views. The hill is to your left, the gathering space off to the right. In the foreground is the small dog area. So you're seeing benches along the perimeter, drinking fountain. This would be the pea stone. And then there's the dividing fence. And then the planting area is fenced off as well, providing shade to the space. In the background is the large dog area with all the same components. A perimeter path of pavement, which provides the accessible route, seating, and drinking fountain. Trash receptacles are outside of the park, and that allows Boston Parks and their trash truck to have better access to them versus them being deep within the park. So then Rob's going to continue and talk about the playground design.
Okay, thanks, Kyle. So my name is Rob Varela. I'm a landscape architect and associate with KZLA. I will walk through the playground and the splash pad. And as we get through this, we start with some existing playground, which many of you are probably already familiar with. We'll get into the new location of the proposed playground. We'll look at the splash pad, and then we'll get into the equipment selections as well. And we're really hoping to hear some more feedback from you all tonight to help inform some of these other decisions as well. So starting with the existing plan, this is the current location where Kyle had just presented the dog park. With the current layout, you have your 2 to 5 year old equipment, your 5 to 12, you have some swings and a lot of pavement and kind of a lot of space that's not really functioning. There's not as much play value as there could be for a playground of this size. It's pretty hot. There's a couple trees that have died in these tree pits. So we really want to add some more shade as well and start to look into how to add more play value in general. Next slide. So some of the existing features there, as I just mentioned, there's a couple of the main structures. There are some swings on the splash pad and some other furnishings like the seating and the trees with the tree grates. Next slide. Okay, so getting into the programming, and we had discussed this at the last meeting as well. With the existing, we do feel that there's some underutilized space for a playground of that size, so we're going to investigate the layout a little bit more. We'll provide more shade. We'll look at providing more access and inclusivity with the play equipment, and we'll look at adding a lot more play value within the playground as well. We're also looking into different types of play equipment. We'll get into some structured play, some less structured, more imaginative or exploratory play. We'll look at a better functioning splash pad or some water play. And then, as Kyle had mentioned too, with kind of the theme for some of these proposed improvements, trying to weave in that urban wild aesthetic into the playground as well. So bringing some of the kind of naturalistic kind of colors and themes and palettes into the play space. So during the last meeting, we did receive a request or a question that if we had discussed these improvements with West End House. So we did set up a meeting with them, and we met with the youth group, and we talked to them about what they like about the existing playground, and then also showed them some proposed ideas and got them to weigh in on both of those. So on this slide here, you can see what they liked about the current playground. They liked some of the structures, the climbing structures. They really liked swings and wanted to see more of them. And they really wanted to get into more social spaces as well, just areas where they could kind of hang out and have conversations and just be kind of removed from some of the playground equipment. Next slide. And then some of the other proposed features that they requested, they really like the idea of an accessible carousel or spinner. More swings, and with swings, different types of swings as well. They like the idea that there could be some group swings where you could have multiple users at the same time, and looking at some other climbing structures as well of different varying levels of challenges. And as mentioned, the social spaces as well, just more seating. Next slide. Okay, so I'll start kind of big picture here with looking at the layout. Now, Kyle had mentioned, some of the benefits of moving the play space down to the lower level. It really allows some more flexibility to create play space that's offering a lot more play value and connectivity to other park features. So, and we presented this idea to West End House as well, who thought it would be helpful for them since right now, when they visit, they bring all the children down to say just the playground or just the ball field one day. But now, if the playground's at the lower level, children could be on the climbing structures. There could also be a kickball game going on in the adjacent field. And there's this really nice transparency between the two, so you can have clear sight lines and having multiple activities going on at the same time. So it's really trying to make this feel a little bit more connected. It's a short distance from West End House. There are multiple accessible entries to this as well. The grading's relatively flat here, which is favorable. It presents a good opportunity too of taking advantage of some of the existing trees down below. We're keeping back from them and away from kind of the root zones, but we're also going to be having a little bit of shade benefit from those trees as well. In terms of the size of the playground, it is about the same square footage as the existing, but we're packing in a lot more play equipment, a lot more unstructured kind of playful features. So although it's the same footprint, we feel that we've packed in a lot of play value into this, into some new offerings that aren't in the current playground. The splash pad is the other component that I'll get into more detail after we get through the playground renderings. But it's worth noting on here its location, because where the splash pad is currently, it's inside the playground, which really kind of caters to just people using the playground. But where we've located it now, it opens it up to more park users. So for instance, if someone's playing in the sports field, they could go to the splash pad and cool off with some misting towers. And I think with that, we can skip to the next one. Okay, so we'll start to zoom in on this. We'll look at the plan, and we'll get into a few renderings as well to help illustrate this a bit more. And we'll spend a moment on the plan and dive into more specific elements, and we'll look at the equipment as well. So the goal was to create something that would be much more accessible and have a lot more inclusive components. We want to try balancing the idea of structured play, where you have more manufactured play equipment, with some other free play and just kind of nice spaces to run around, some other areas where you could have social spaces, and some opportunities to have a little bit more imaginative play or exploratory areas where you could have these like little moments of discovery for kids to kind of like find things throughout the playground. So we're really trying to find other ways of adding fun features in the playground as well, aside from just manufactured play equipment. And in doing that, we're trying to relate to that theme again of the urban wild, bringing in some of this naturalistic idea into the play space. So starting at the left side, we'll have our entrance, which is to orient you, the gathering space would be over on the far left off the page. So we start at the entrance there. We have a little bit of an unloading area where you could have like some stroller parking, you could have some seating. This could be kind of like the meetup or drop-off kind of area. And that is a paved path that continues through the play space over to the far side of the social space and splash pad. And it's connecting these two areas, say Plan North and South, which is accessible. It's rubber surfacing, so it's stable and an accessible surface. And it's connecting all of these different pieces of play equipment throughout the whole playground. So starting at the left side again, we have our 2 to 5 playground equipment, and we have plenty of seating around there. We're also integrating more trees for some shade. We have our carousel towards the middle there, which is intended for all uses, all ages of users. We have a little bit of a kind of exploratory area just north of that, where you could kind of meander through some new proposed trees and have like little moments where there could be some seating back there. And that ties into the larger 5 to 12 structure that it's a little bit bigger and has a little bit more challenges to it. South of that, we have our social space, where we have different types of furnishings. We have some tables and chairs. This could be kind of picnicky space. This could be like your home base with bags and whatnot. And then south of that, we have our swings. And we'll talk more about the types of swings there. We're adding a lot more swings and different types of swings. And lastly, on the right side would be a canopy, which is kind of being used for two purposes. Definitely for shade around that social space, but also kind of a gateway and really an anchor to the playground as it opens up into the sports field beyond. And that we can get into the renderings. Now these will help move throughout the space, and we'll try and help illustrate the type of equipment and the scale as well. So we start off with the 2 to 5 equipment here. We have some seating around there. We'll have some great shade opportunities as well, and we'll have some integrated kind of planting in there. This is all poured in place rubber surfacing as well. We're looking at some ground level play components, including some sensory pieces. Like on this one, there's that little musical area and that side table. We also have elevated equipment as well. So in terms of a 2 to 5 piece of equipment, we've tried to find something that has, all the expected things you'd find in a playground, like slides and climbers, but adding some other, different levels of challenges as well to this main structure here. Next slide. We'll continue through and get to the 5 to 12 year main structure, which is a little bit bigger. It has a lot more challenging ways to get up and different ways to kind of navigate the space. You have your ground level activities, you have more balancing components, you have different climbing ways to get up to the top. You have this really kind of nice vantage point up at the top there, where it's this elevated area with the bridge. And that could be a really nice moment where you could overlook the field. You could look down towards the splash pad in the social space. And then you have the large slide, gets you back down to the bottom. Working our way from the entrance, this is a view where you kind of get a little bit more of a glimpse of the whole playground with the 2 to 5 on the left side. You got a few other pieces in the center and the 5 to 12 in the far, we're in the background there. You have your canopy anchoring that social space and the splash pad beyond. You have your swings over on the right side, and then you have this group seesaw activity in the foreground as well. And then with this too, all of the surfacing in the foreground, we have our rubber surfacing again, and we have that paved path down the middle that's connecting all these pieces together. Towards the center of here, we have incorporated the accessible universal carousel, which was requested from West End House. And that's another view of the 2 to 5 structure there. The 5 to 12 area would be over to the right side, and some seating around this area as well. And then lastly, we have a bird's eye view looking down at the entire play space, working from the entrance in the far back all the way through the meandering path and ending at the splash pad in the field at the bottom of the page there, to give you a sense of the scale of the whole play space. So again, similar footprint to what's there presently, but we've really tried to add a lot more inclusive features, a lot more play value through the structured play and some of the more exploratory kind of play. And we've tried to cater to some of the feedback that we've heard recently about types of play equipment, and then some of the other features that were designed for here as well. Okay, so I do want to touch upon the play equipment a little bit. So you've kind of already seen this in the renderings, but just to kind of talk about this briefly a little bit more, and then we'll look at the splash pad quick and then open up for discussion. As I had mentioned, we tried to find pieces that fit the theme of Ringer Park, that kind of urban wild aesthetic. But more importantly, we're looking at features that would be more inclusive, that are providing different amenities and features for users of all abilities and whatnot. And then we're looking at some adaptive features that have really easy access. We have different levels of challenges on some of these pieces. And we're also looking at, with all these pieces, different developmental skills as well, whether it be physical or social or cognitive development opportunities. So we have our 2 to 5 structure, the 5 to 12. We have our swings, which we'll get into more detail, the accessible carousel, and the group seesaw. And this is just the manufactured equipment. This isn't all the other kind of play opportunities that we've integrated into the design as well. So looking at the swings on the left side there, we have 4 bays. We have, starting on the far left of that upper diagram, is where we have that group swing, which was requested from the West End House participants. That's that image there. Really great piece. You get several kids on this at the same time, which is really good opportunity for kind of teamwork and social skills and whatnot. We have multiple bays of built swings. I think we have 3 more built swings. We do have the molded inclusive seat there, which is that image at the bottom for accessibility. And then we have a couple other bucket swings as well, more of the toddler seats. Towards the middle is the accessible carousel, which is great because it provides really easy access for any user with a mobility device. And it's also great because it can fit many different users at the same time. And it's rated for ages from 2 to 12 and up. Then over on the right side, we have that group seesaw, which is great as well. It has different levels of support, whether it be backrest and foot support, which helps with balance for different users, considered accessible ground play as well. And also great because you can have multiple kids on either end at the same time and in the center. So this is typically a really enjoy piece that we've seen in playgrounds. Next slide. Looking at the 2 to 5 structure a little closer, we start to look at one slide back. There, the 2 to 5 year structure. Now, with a lot of the 2 to 5 year old rated equipment, like typically you see a lot of smaller pieces. We did try to find one that is that has a lot of offerings with this. There's a lot of ground level play. Like we mentioned, there's some sensory components like the xylophone panel on the left side and a lot of other play panels. You do have some climbing, whether it be nets or ladders. You do have little observation areas. You have elevated platforms. You have a double slide down the back as well. And then you have other components like talk tubes and things like that. So we felt that this was a good scale that is comparable to the current layout, but offers a lot more play components in it and still fits within that urban wild theme in kind of palette. Next slide. And then on a bigger scale, we have the 5 to 12 structure, which according to the manufacturer is rated for 50 users. So, it is pretty substantial. It has a lot of lower ground level activities, as well as elevated platforms. You have different levels and ways to navigate this play space and ways to get up. Some are more challenging than others, which is great. There's different nets and ladders and your large slide and a lot of other balancing components in there as well. Okay, now to quickly look at the splash pad specifically, you saw this previously in other renderings, and to reiterate, the idea is that in this new location, we're trying to open up the splash pad as a cooling amenity for more park users. It's not inclusive to just the playground users, but anyone that's walking by along the path or using the sports field can feel like they can also use this as a moment to cool off. So that location now is opened up more towards the flexible sports field. We did discuss this with West End House youth group as well. And what we've kind of talked through is the idea that there are multiple types of features here. There are the more misting, cooling off features, like over on the far right side. And then there's also some other playful features, and we'll have other flush mounted spray heads as well. And then back to the renderings here, you see in the foreground area, we have a lot of flush mounted features, which are just level with the pavement and spray up at different intervals. We have a misting pole on the far right side, which is where, as I mentioned, someone from the sports field would feel like they could come over and kind of use that as a moment to cool off. We could also have some seating around here under the canopy or just outside of the spray zone. And thinking of this as a way for more park users to kind of cool off than just being a playground exclusive feature. And just one more view, this focusing a little bit more on the canopy. We are trying to have something that is really this gateway that's tying all of these park components together. And we felt like this canopy, in addition to offering the shade, would kind of serve as that really nice anchor to the playground that then also serves as the backdrop to the field. Thinking that if there's ever performances going on in the field or in this paved area of the splash pad, this canopy is kind of the backdrop to some of those events.
Rob, sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to, if
Yes.
you could, if there was one view that you think is good showing the fencing, I feel like the one just before this is sort of helpful for people, when you look at the plan view, it's just a black line, but this playground would be mostly enclosed with fence, not completely closed off, but in order to, retain children in the play area, we would be containing that space with fencing so that there's not too much mixing between the pathways, which were noted in the third meeting as being occasionally dangerous with people who decided to take their scooters through the park. So we're trying to sort of create the space within the playground that's safe, defined by fencing, but that has still some open porousness with the field on this side and the opening, like there's a more formal sort of, or not more formal, more controlled gated opening, I think, on the other side towards the gathering space. So just wanted to go into that a bit. Okay, thanks.
Yep, that's a good point. And actually, if a few slides back, there's that bird's eye aerial, that might be good to touch upon for a second there. And it's also worth noting too, the ball field is currently fully fenced or 95% fenced, which does encourage dog use. That fence would be removed, and the now fenced area for the dog park is up in the dog park. So the ball field fence would go away, but on this view, you'll see most of the perimeter of the playground is fenced. You do have controlled access in the far side of the playground on this image, where you do have gated access. And then the only transparency is just under the canopy. And the thinking is that if you are visiting here with, say you have two children, one wants to be on the swings, one wants to be in the splash pad or playing soccer in the field, that you have this, it's a little fluid between the two. So that does open up to the field to present a little bit more opportunity there.
Great, thank you for going over that.
And I think that wraps up the splash pad and play equipment, which would mean we're ready for discussion. Yes.
Okay. This has been the quietest chat meeting I've ever been to, it's usually we have like a couple of clarification questions or someone saying, this is bad or great or whatever. Chat is silent. I hope it works and there's not some technical issue that we're actually dealing with. So great. Someone's already raising their hand. This is great. I think it's going to be a speaking group instead of a chat group. So welcome. And I think Michael will allow you guys to go in the order that you've raised your hands.
Ken, please.
Hi. Can you
Hi.
hear me?
Yes.
Hi. So I have a couple of questions. The first one is, why is there no trees or shade in the swing area? And the second question is, what type of sport are you envisioning for the sports field?
Yes, I can start answering that. So it's a little zoomed out on this plan here, but the trees that are just south of the swing, those are all existing trees. The playground layout is where it is because we're trying to stay out of the critical root zone of those trees, just so that we're maintaining, healthy existing trees there. They would be offering some shade for that area though, and we would also be infilling with more trees. It's a little deceptive on some of the renderings because we're trying to highlight some of the areas a little bit but there is that one kind of brighter tree on this plane here behind the swing, so we would be infilling that and there would be some shade for the swing area.
But it doesn't sound like there's a lot of shade.
Can we go back to one of the other renderings too?
Well, and also be clear
Awesome.
about the clearances we have to provide for the.
Yeah. And I'm wondering if there's maybe just the zoomed in plan of that would help show that too. There swings have a very big what's called the use zone for that. So it's the offset that you have to have clearance of any type of obstructions. So we are keeping things pretty close to the minimum of what is needed for clearances, and we're adding trees just outside of that. So we have, so just off the page there's a tree. It's the time of day on the renderings isn't entirely accurate. There would be more shade cast for this, but the fence basically is and that pavement is basically hugging the amount of surfacing that is needed for swing clearances. That makes sense.
I think though, like if we, and it sounds like there's support for more trees, so given that the fence outlines where that use zone is, like we would obviously couldn't put trees right next to the swings, but we could put them in the lawn area, assuming there's no root zone that we're intruding in there. So
Yes.
we can certainly add more trees in the playground area because yes, we definitely understand the need for cool surfaces for kids. No one wants to sit on a hot swing in summer and burn themselves. So
Yep.
that's a great comment, and we will see where we can fit more.
Great, thank you. And then the sports field?
Yes.
Yeah, the
so
sizing, yeah.
Yeah, I don't have the exact dimensions listed on here. There is a level of youth soccer that the field accommodates in kind of the rectangle, but it's not just that one rectangle that's been shown on the plans. There is lawn area beyond that. So what we've heard a lot is it's a little bit more flexibility in terms of the sports and kind of yard games. It could be soccer, there could be kickball, there could be capture the flag kind of games as well. That's some of the activities that we heard were popular or desired for an open field.
And I think there's like formal sizing associated with different age groups. And so if a league wanted to have a permit here and use it, I think that would be an under 10. I think, is that right, guys? Do you remember?
I believe it's youth under 10 is what
Yeah.
that can accommodate for a soccer field.
Right.
Okay, so the fencing around the sports field would be right along where the path is that correct?
There would be no fencing for the sports field anymore. That would be removed. The
Oh,
outfield fence that exists today would no longer be there.
okay.
We've heard that with the fence, there's a lot of dog use with it being fenced in, so it's being removed to hopefully encourage more dog use in the dog park area.
Okay. I'm just wondering if a stray ball wants to roll away. I just wondering how you want to deal with that.
And I think with sports that have a specific orientation like baseball, you know, we're accustomed to rotating that depending or providing tall fencing. But I think in this situation, we would not be having a backstop anymore and any kind of implied direction. So there wouldn't be a foreseeable need for protecting kids from aerial balls. I think that would be like, we'd be mostly looking at soccer, maybe frisbee, things that are more ground. Well, I guess frisbee is not ground based, but no one's gonna get really beamed by a frisbee, I don't think. So we didn't foresee it as a significant issue. If you're thinking it is a significant issue, then we can try and look at maybe there's more trees placed between that edge. Something that could intercept a stray ball, perhaps.
Yeah, okay, all right, yeah, sure. So one last question. Is there any consideration for like with all the seating and the tables, is there any consideration for maybe putting in a table that has a chess board on it, or, you know, so people can just have chess games in the park?
Yeah, we love those. And if, I mean, we've put them in a lot of other parks and, you know, like, I think we wouldn't put many in here, but, yeah, like one or two, sure, we could
Yeah, as
absolutely.
many as you can put in would be great. 2 would be great, or more. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, sounds like an avid chess user, so that's awesome.
Bob?
Yep, thank you. A couple of quick questions. Do you know in the past if the Parks Department has moved a playground to put a dog park in its place?
I am
Go
not aware of
ahead.
it. Sorry,
ahead.
yeah, no, I just thought you were looking for an answer. And I'm not aware of any
Yeah,
specific instances, but maybe it's happened, I don't know.
anyway, I voted for leaving the playground where it is for a lot of good reasons, I think, and now I'm disappointed to find the new location. As you announced it, I said mentally, well, perhaps at least they can spread it out and make it a little bigger, and it isn't even any bigger. That's a prime location. It's up above things a little bit for kids to play. They're in the park. Anyway, you know, I don't make the decision at the Parks Department. I would leave it there, but and no matter what goes where you're planning on the playground, are you guys going to deal with the groundwater issue? If Stan Ivan's around, go ahead and give him a call wherever he is and ask him about that. I've lived in here for over 40 years and there's always water standing there. I don't know what the problem is, but it's never really been resolved. And
Yeah,
that's where the playground's going.
Yeah, and that's something we can do under drainage under the playground to be able to take care of that.
I hope so, because really for 40 years, it doesn't seem to go away. But anyway, good luck. And actually, one final question. The exterior park fencing, like right on the other side of the playground here, the park boundary, tall chain link, and you get over by the basketball courts, really crappy, beat up. Looks like hell. It doesn't work as a fence and it's hard to get to, so it'd be quite a job. But I'm sorry I didn't bring it up earlier in the planning. It's that kind of infrastructure nuts and bolts that gets overlooked.
Well, thank you for bringing that up. That honestly was not on our radar. We are going to be replacing a stretch of fencing that basically, like, the property line is sort of a question mark. There are a couple of property line locations around the park that we're going to be addressing. And this one is right by the Emery Road entrance where a vehicle hit the fence, knocked it over. And we're going to be installing some new fence. I mean, we have some fence in there now to sort of retain the park boundary, but that will also be addressed as well. Teresa Conti, I think, is that.
And
person.
actually, finally, a compliment. The entrances to the park, they've been long overdue, especially like what's the corner on Alston Street? And they don't have to be fancy, but just tell folks that they're going into a public park and what it is. So hats off for all the redesign of entrances.
Yeah, there's a number of, thank you for the acknowledgement, that's nice. But yeah, we also are aware of the retaining wall that's along the woodland area adjacent to the residential parking lot that is
Yep.
falling down. That's gonna be part of the project as well. So there's a fair
Good.
amount of sort of housekeeping issues.
Yeah, that's important. Thank you.
Yep.
Regina? Regina?
Hi, yeah. Just want to say overall, I'm so excited to see all this. I used to live right on Ringer Park and spent pretty much every single day walking through. And I used to also run an after school program with the Alston Brighton CDC that we'd go to the park every day. So it's really exciting to see that's going to be a new space for folks. I guess I have two big questions and a lot of little ones, but I'll ask two now. One, so forgive me, I haven't been to any other meetings about this, but I'm curious if you all are touching the urban wild. Right now, there's a really significant rodent problem I'm sure you're all well aware of, but so significant that, and sort of to echo what Bob was saying, that rodents have chewed the fence. There's just so much, I don't know, walking through at night is just a no-go. You can't wear sandals in the summer because there's just so many rats. So curious if that is being looked at all in this plan, or if that's a different construction issue. And then secondly, what's going to be the sort of mitigation or messaging to families during the construction, especially last summer when it was so hot. Ringer Park, the splash pad was a really vital space for families to cool off, especially children. And honestly, even my household, we'd go cool off in the park in the splash pad when it was in the 90s, and didn't want to run the AC too high. So that was a really vital spot. And I know that Jackson Man has operated as a cooling center, but having that outdoor 24/7 cooling center available was really honestly vital for even my household of like young 20s. So yeah, those are two questions.
Those are some great points. To answer your first question, we will be doing some work in the urban wild that is going to be formalizing the pathway. That sort of main entrance that goes through there is going to be paved in a way. It's going to be an asphalt with an exposed aggregate surface so that it looks more naturalistic than your standard asphalt path, but that it is accessible so that you can push a stroller, push a wheelchair. If you're mobility impaired, you can walk through that experience as well. And we are going to be doing numerous work. We're going to be working on numerous trees, basically within, I think it was a 20-foot offset of the path. We don't have the funding to go throughout the entire urban wild and address all the trees there, but we're trying to set the trees that are in the entire park up for a healthy future, specifically ones that are near pathways and could pose risks for falling. So we were focusing mostly on the trees in the woodland area, but we've definitely heard that glass, litter, needles, all of that is a real issue. And so I think we would also be including a degree of cleanup as part of the project. And, that's I know of like community cleanup days, and I'm less familiar with like the scope of formal work that you would give a contractor for cleanup, but that is definitely something that we're aware of and that we would be trying to add in to this project. So as far as messaging and summer heat, what we do standard is, we notify people that the park is going to be closing. We try and do it 2 weeks ahead of time before the contractor goes in. And it's good to hear that, the need for this kind of a space in a neighborhood that's this dense is really significant. I mean, we know that, but it's sort of like, maybe we will amend our signage to include alternate locations where splash pads exist, because we will be closing this off in summer, and hopefully we'll be opening it up for the next summer, but that's always the sticking point with our projects, is that construction season is
Mhm.
really outdoor use season, and it's always frustrating for residents. And we get that. And what we try and do is, try and be as on time as we can and try and give some warning so that people don't plan. But there's not a lot that we can do as far as like, once we start getting into asking a contractor to like work on this section of the park, but not that section of the park, and leave this part open, it ends up adding to the value of the work that they say, well, fine, if you want this in this particular way, it's going to cost this much more. So that's something that we don't often get into, phasing the work in order to keep things open.
Yeah.
Just wanting to like manage your expectations on that one, because I know it's a bummer.
Appreciate your responses. Yeah.
Okay.
And then we have a quick comment from Eric Lee. I just wanted to mention that I'm loving the final design. I'm looking forward to permanent and construction. And then Molly, she hasn't gone, so you haven't gone, so I'm gonna just ask that you unmute.
Hi, yeah, thank you. I think everything looks great, so thank you. I can imagine a couple reasons why you chose to put the playground on the lower end and the park on the upper end, but you could maybe talk about that decision. And then I have one other short question.
Kyle, do you want to talk about that?
Yep. Yeah, so the playground at the lower location came from one feedback we got from the community, feedback we got from the West End House, but also thinking that we had in terms of how the playground would be used and how other parts of the park would be used. Because we think there is some synergy if you have multiple kids of different ages with different interests to be able to use the field and the playground simultaneously and not feel like you have to be in two geographic different areas at different elevations. You can keep track of the kids all in one spot. And then I think there's also a relationship that at this level, someone could also easily use the courts or be in the gathering space and still all be visible at that lower level. Now, the flip side is, how do you locate a dog park? We want to make sure that dog parks aren't immediately adjacent to residents and not immediately adjacent to playgrounds or fields either. So actually there's a big advantage to having the dog park here kind of furthest away from residents and, good visibility throughout the park, but separate from some of the other more active uses as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then just a quick question about the fencing. So you think you'll be doing the tall fencing along Briggs Place that's all crappy and beat up?
Along here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's
It's a
where
shame to have such a pretty park and then just still have
Yeah.
that ugly hole-filled fence.
It's always a matter of boring budget, but if it may be one of those add alternate items, which is basically like, if the contractor says we can afford it, then we add it to the project, and if they say that's gonna tip you over your limit, then we don't. I agree with you. It is like sad and terrible looking. But given that we aren't gonna have like a baseball field there, there's slightly less need for like new, fresh, tall fence. And it does add up really fast from a budget perspective. So that would be the one reason why we wouldn't be able to. Like as we're looking at it now, our budget is 2.2 million, and that is what we're aiming for. We have some money in our budget for what's called contingency, because right now, literally, I've had a number of park projects go out to bid, and the bids come back at 140% higher than what we thought. And we don't want to get stuck in another funding challenge. This part of our additional funding comes from a grant that has an expiration date. And so we're trying to be super conservative about that. that can mean that like, if we have, you know, the additional funding, we have all the, you know, a couple add alternates, here's some additional fencing here, here's some fitness stations potentially was something that was brought up in the comprehensive plan that would be something that you could easily add in sort of here and there throughout the park. So we have a number of these things that we're kind of like thinking of that we could include. And it's great to hear the locations where it's really critical. But I can't say like 100% yes, it's in kind of thing, you know? So.
Right. Well, thank you. I appreciate all your efforts on this.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Ken?
Yes. Hi, it's me again. So I actually have, my husband also has a question, but I just want to ask a quick question before I pass the mic to him. In the playground view, on the lower left corner is the green space. What is that? It's just green space?
Yep, we are maintaining some area that could have trees. It could be just kind of open play area.
Okay.
That could certainly have some trees to help shade some of that area.
Okay, so you said that the playground is the same size as the playground currently. So is there a reason why we limit it to the same size and not expand it? Because it looks like there might be more space there that you can use.
There certainly is more space that could be used. You know, we want to be mindful of maintaining a really you know, a decent sized flexible sports field, but also too, we can't really push it any more south because of those existing trees. We are right outside of the critical root zone of those trees, so we want to be mindful of preserving those as well. So it's a little bit of a balance between not taking up too much of the open lawn area for other sports activities, and kind of nestling this in between existing vegetation that we want to maintain.
Yeah, and there's one other aspect too. We have a budget, so no different than the Griggs Place fence. The bigger the playground gets, the more expensive it is. So we're trying to balance all the needs of the different aspects of the project.
The other thing I'd say about the size of it too, you know, the existing square footage wise, it is about the same, but the current playground has a lot of pavement areas and it's not really the best layout. There's a lot of underutilized space there. So, you know, it could be the same square footage, but we are adding a lot more play value and other amenities in that same footprint.
Okay. All right, so I'm gonna pass the mic on to my husband.
Hi. Yeah, I've got a couple of questions. You know, first of all, I do like the location of the playground down near the field. I think, you know, it will support, yeah, like you said, both the multi-use in terms of going back and forth to the field, but also, you know, reducing the number of people that will run their dog on the sports field instead of up in the dog park. One concern about the playground is it didn't look like there was much in the way of seating for like parents while they're waiting for their children. And then the other thing is I saw lots of you know, activity for kind of 2 to 12, but nothing really for 13 to 120. So I'm wondering if there's like any plans for something like you know, a ping pong table either there or in that central area. And then, yeah, I guess kind of like to get answers to that question.
I can start with the seating. So we do have mixed seating throughout the playground. Off the top of my head, I think it's about like 12 benches placed throughout the playground, in addition to several tables that have seating around those as well. So we do have a lot of seating throughout the entire play space around each of those kind of play components. Those seating and
kind of the beyond 12.
yeah, in the beyond the 12. It's not anything that we had heard at past meetings. You know, we were staying consistent with the age ratings that were out there presently, which is the 2 to 5 and 5 to 12. We hadn't heard of much need for like the more later teens with some of that equipment.
But also what we're doing is creating social spaces which work better for teens and for other generations, you know, folks that are
Yeah, like the
caregivers or guardians or someone who just needs to rest in the shade who might be using the sports field.
Yeah, So I mean, it would be good in that area to have, you know, like my wife said, chess tables and or mahjong tables, ping pong tables, as well as like just area where they could do things like, I know at one time we had Tai Chi being done in the park. You know, just that type of thing, being able to accommodate that. And then, you know, another question I had is it looks like there's quite a bit of paved pathway here. You know, what's the thinking about making it paved versus like a softer surface? And, you know, partially to, you know, as we said, there are people that actually ride mopeds or bikes and scooters through the park. That would potentially slow them down a little bit. As well as, you know, is there any intention to put, you know, where there's longer sections or at the entrance, kind of those staggered sections so that you can't just blast through to kind of calm down traffic?
I think as far as accessibility goes, a softer surface makes it not ADA accessible. And so we're really looking to provide maximum access. And, you know, obviously we have gates at one of these entrances to contain other users. We don't want vehicles in that area. The other thing though that I'm realizing, this was brought up in the previous meeting and we have not delved into it, but it needs to be on our list, is sort of a baffle system. Like you can have some way of basically making it really uninviting for wheeled vehicles to get into the park without truly limiting our maintenance guys, which is what we want to encourage, maintenance access. And, you know, I apologize that that's not something that we're showing yet, but that is something that's on our radar and that we need to develop, sort of getting an understanding from our maintenance crew, like where is the in, where is the out, you know, like what are the points that have to be vehicular and where we can't create some kind of tight turn that would make it, if not totally preventing a vehicle like a moped or whatever, but at least making it something that's not welcoming, that no one really is going to want to have to deal with, you know, their delivery bike or whatever.
Yeah.
Those are good points. And that's something that we have not yet gotten around to addressing. So I appreciate you bringing that up.
Okay. And then just, you know, in terms of the playing field, will it be marked? So will it be like yard line indicators on it? You know, is it clear that it's a park and not just an open field so that, you know, there's kind of priority given to people that want to play sports? And then last, you know, in terms of the impact during the build, I know Tenacity is a very strong program, and just making sure that, you know, they're aware of the timing and that we've worked out, you know, they're in the tennis court, so maybe there is no impact, but, you know, that's a program that is important to a lot of the youth in the area and their parents.
We hadn't looped them in yet because the courts weren't being addressed, but that is a great point. And now that we have our clear schedule that we need to follow for funding reasons, you know, like this is what we need to commit to. And so I will definitely reach out to them. Do you happen to have any specific information for people who manage this site for Tenacity? If you don't, I can find it, but sometimes it's just wonderful.
No, our kids are all out of the program, so
Okay.
don't have the current information.
Paul McCaffrey will know.
Paul, that's true. Paul would definitely know.
Yeah. And then on the field, will it be marked as a field?
No, I don't think so, because of the flexibility that we're trying to encourage, right? And so that's I know that your point is like, you know, so that we can have people who, I think we're gonna, you know, let the permitting department know, like, these are the dimensions and these are the things that can play here. But as far as if you mark it for football, then the soccer players get confused. I mean,
Well, it's not going to be big enough for an official soccer or
No.
football. So it's just more a matter of having, some demarcation to indicate there's a field there.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. I'm not sure though, I guess it's like the ability to have two different groups playing. Do you want them to sort of feel like they can only play within that rectangle that's, what we're showing here is like number 7.
Yeah.
Like as Kyle brought up before, like there is lawn area outside of this rectangle. Did I say triangle before? I meant rectangle if I said triangle. But so it's like we want to show what's possible. We would let our permitting department know what's possible here, and they would add that to the sort of eligible list. But I don't think showing lines would make sense. I don't know. I mean, thank you for bringing it up. We'll mull it over. It's not a cost issue. Like lines are cheap. So.
And if not, I mean, maybe there's like some provision for an athletic shed or box so that cones or whatever.
Or benches for people to watch the game.
Well, yeah, because if it's too close to the field, people could get hurt.
And we could also, you could sit under the overhang area in that paved zone, the shaded area between the playfield and the playground. So we're trying to provide that space serving both sides, I guess.
And the mound would still be here for spectator seating.
Oh, okay.
My favorite mound was where we thought we were going to put the dog park, and it turned out lots of utilities under that mound.
Okay.
That mound is not going anywhere.
At least you're smiling.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Ellen, you're next.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. I love where the dog park is now. I wish that the dog park could have some grassy area rather than just the pea gravel, but I get it. I had a question, and I can't recall, and maybe I missed this someplace. The playing field, is it turf or grass? I mean, is it artificial turf or grass?
It would be lawn, natural grass.
It is. Okay. So then my next question is about the splash pad and whether or not you think where it's sited would create any muddy areas. We had that happen at Hobart Park where the water feature was too close to the sand box and it just became mud. That was eventually fixed by just getting rid of the sandbox. But it became a big problem. So I wonder what the designers have thought about that.
We will pitch the pavement so that it's pitched away from the lawn and towards drains, but then also I'm thinking that the components that are closer to the field be more of misting towers, so it's a very low water output and it's more of a cooling feature for anyone closer to the sports field.
Okay, thank you.
There was a comment in the chat about signage and hoping there will be signage to direct people to the dog area. So that is also a great idea. I think especially in these parks where you've had one use in this location and now it's in a different location, we would definitely want to notify people where it is and to encourage its use, right? And not to have people remaining in that open grassy area, because we know that that's a popular location now, and we hope that by taking down the fences it will be less popular. But I think having people be aware that up on the hill there is the dog park is a great idea.
Regina?
Yeah, I don't want to, if anyone has other questions since I've already spoke, but I'm just curious. I've always wondered that area that's sort of behind the number 2 where there's those tall grasses on the hill. It always seemed like that was intentionally native grasses or some sort of rabbit habitat, or it could just be like an unmowed spot. Is that an intended rabbit habitat? It it does function. There are some wonderful like rabbits and migratory birds that use it, but I'm curious if that is going to be maintained, or if that even is intentional, or just where the grass doesn't get mowed because it's on such a steep hill.
Mm.
I think it is a maintenance issue with the hill. I think
Oh,
that
really?
our guys can't get up there.
Yeah.
It may have been planted intentionally. We have a robotic mower now, which is pretty amazing. And that can handle 3 to 1, I think, or 50% slopes. It handles some really steep slopes. We've had some challenges with it breaking, and there is only one. But I know that like Fallon Field in Roslindale has some pretty steep slopes, and it mows those. But I want to say like the comprehensive plan, Kyle, do you want to talk about what was sort of discussed for that? We're sort of feeling like well enough alone, we'll leave that area in this phase of development, but like, Kyle, do you want to talk about what the area?
Yeah,
was
we
for
did
that
talk
one?
about that hillside a bit, and I think there were different viewpoints. Some that there should be mown lawn just for picnicking or hanging out, and then others wanted maybe the steeper areas to be better habitat, you know, with pollinator species and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think there are totally some spots that are way too steep for picnicking, and rather than mowing them and breaking machinery, I think, yeah, it would be awesome to see some sort of pollinator species, especially because there's so little rabbit habitat and they do exist in Alston so much. I think they've become to rely on the tall grasses there and, can hide from the hawks. So that's the minutia. That's it for me.
Thank you, Regina. Bob?
Hi, do you guys talk to the Boston Public School Department? It relates to what they may or may not do there with the community center and the schools. It would be a shame if you guys both sort of went off in 2 different directions and never talked to each other.
No,
So
we've had some meetings with them.
Oh, that's good to hear.
Yes, I know, right? We're
So
in
what can
it.
you tell us? They don't tell us a damn thing out here.
They have a final plan that they have shared, the Public Facilities Department, and Alistair Lux is the person who was running that plan, because they wanted to sort of investigate. Basically, there is no plan as of now. There is no specific school that is intended to go into the new building. Like, so we had previously put the playground on ice because we were waiting for BPS to figure out what school population was going to be there so that we could try and design with them in mind. And then we basically come to like, okay, we have this funding, we have the desire to go forward. There is no plan for the population that the school will host. It still will be a school. It's BPS property. And we discussed, I reached out to him recently because at the previous meeting, there was a request about community gardens, and I wanted to see, because their plan also involves community gardens. And so because they anticipate doing that as part of their project, and because of the limited area, and because of the rat problem that we do have at Ringer Park, we were not going to be doing community gardens, but I did discuss this with him recently, just because I wanted to make sure that we weren't going to be doubling up and offering things that they're offering.
And
Thank
someday it'd be nice if there was some kind of green boulevard from Ringer Park all the way to Union Square, where the Jackson Man is now sitting, but that's supposed to go, I understand. So maybe they can redesign with a nice entryway and you guys can help them up there.
Yes,
Okay.
that is a good goal.
We can read.
Yeah.
It's holidays.
It is 7:23. We planned on wrapping this up around 7:30, so it's a few minutes early. But
Yes.
yeah, I feel like we've heard a lot of great comments, and I think that some good suggestions, people to reach out to and include. So I appreciate you all keeping with this, because, you know, we see a lot of familiar faces at this point and names, and this has been quite a process. So now we're going to kind of go into our mode where it's about AutoCAD and specifications and stuff that doesn't lend itself to attractive community meetings. We will provide updates as we go. If something significant is changing, we will come back and say, hey, just to let you know, this is going to be different. Let's talk about it. But in the meantime, we've got our project website here, my contact info. And thank you guys so much.
Thank you, B.
Yeah. Have a wonderful night.
Have a good one. Bye.
Thank you all. Bye.
Thank you.
Design team did not stay on. Oh, well. That was a smooth meeting though. That was good.
Was 5 minutes to spare.
Yeah.
I like Bob. Bob came in with coal, but then he left with a gift.
Bob's intense. Bob used to work for Parks, so he's like, you're not getting away with this.
Okay, that makes sense. Because I was
Yeah.
like, he reminds me of somebody on the Jamaica Plain Neighborhood Council. So
Yeah. Yep. Very involved.
that makes
That's
sense. Yeah. Okay.
All right. Well, thank you so much for driving the show tonight.
No problem.
Makes
No
me
problem.
feel-
It was good to learn more about Ringo Park, our playground. What's being built there. It's giving me some ideas in different neighborhoods. I like how inclusive you all are. With just like the multi-generation of kids. Trying to build up social skills, which is pretty cool. And then like having like the inclusive makeshift like carousel for the young person. So
It's funny, that one is it's like one of the most inclusive pieces of play equipment, because like you can wheel onto it, but it is also such a hit no matter where you install it. Like there's one at Millennium Park Playground in West Roxbury, and my daughter has like soccer games there and stuff, and everyone is always afterwards honk. It's like this little gravitational pull.
it's like 10 kids in there.
Yeah. It's terrifying.
I've seen them.
Yeah, so
Great
yeah,
job.
I think we didn't get any real comments about like the play equipment, which is sort of what can you do, you know, but at least we got the feedback at the beginning of like what types of things people wanted. So I think we're kind of set up in a good way. So
Excited.
awesome. All right.
Take
Well, I hope you
care.
have a good night. Yeah, you too.
Enjoy the rest of your week, and congratulations on closing out your last meeting.
All right. We'll see you later. Bye.